Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at TEMI. TEMI is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. And each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry, and today we have a remarkable guest joining us, Alex Page, who is CEO at Nillion. Hello, Alex. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Barry. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Excited to be talking with you guys a little bit about what we're building at Nillion.
As always. So firstly, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We really appreciate you speaking to us. For those who don't know you, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So I started off my career actually working in investment banking. And coming out of college, I really looked at that industry and felt like it was a very prestigious thing. I think a lot of college students do that. They look and they're like, oh man, being a part of investment banking, like moving to New York, like working on all these big deals. And I worked for a couple of investment banks early on in my career. And I think the thing that I really took away from that experience was that there are these big centralized players in the finance world that essentially have just a massive advantage over everybody else. If you ever saw the movie The Big Short, the two young guys with their hedge fund are going to JP Morgan and trying to get access to a trading platform because there's really people that are on the inside and there are people that are on the outside when it comes to finance. So while I was in banking, this was actually a time when Bitcoin got launched and I've heard about it for the first time. I saw that as a real shift in how we looked at the world of finance and how we looked at controlling, say, financial transactions. And at the time, it was a cool idea. Bitcoin was a really interesting idea, but there wasn't a whole lot you could do with it. And so, I came out of investment banking. I wanted to do something that was bigger, but I wasn't tech savvy enough, let's say, at the time to go and build with Bitcoin or try and create an Ethereum or something like that. So I started a company that was focused on selling products to people who were really interested in optimizing their health. We sold nutritional supplements, we sold food products, and thinking as an entrepreneur, what were the things that made my first company really successful? One, put in a lot of hard work, but two, there's a really important element of catching the wave. And I was really lucky because I started a company, in a space where Amazon was trying to grow a lot. They were implementing Amazon Prime. They were trying to get all these products on their platform. And we were one of those really early movers on using Amazon as a sales platform way back before people were making courses about how to still sell stuff on Amazon. Let me say that again. Back before people were making courses on how to sell stuff on Amazon. And I really enjoyed that business and I developed a great skill set from it, but I always wanted to do something deeper than that. I always wanted to be involved in technology. So I exited that company in 2019 and started focusing on how I could help entrepreneurs and founders who had, really early but innovative ideas. How could I help take them from 0 to 1? That's what connected me to the people who are now my co-founders in Nillion.
So what actually drew you to blockchain tech and what was your aha moment when that happened?
So I'd say a lot of people have been drawn to blockchain because they look at the price of Bitcoin. But for me, the really unique, cool thing that I saw when Bitcoin came out into the world was how it dealt with trust. And what I mean by that is that Bitcoin is a decentralized network of essentially a bunch of different people all running mining operations or nodes in different parts of the world. And they're regular people. They're self-interested. They're willing to be bad actors. Any of these individual miners, if there was a way for them to say, oh, guess what? I have 1 million Bitcoin in my wallet now, they would totally do it. But we took all of these thousands and thousands of people all across the world who are self-interested, who are greedy, and got them to agree on a truth between all of them. And that's what blockchain really is. It's a consensus mechanism that allows you to say, we all agree that this much Bitcoin is in all of these places right now, and that this state is true, and do that over and over again. That's a really different way of thinking about trust, right? Instead of say, you trust your bank on how much money is in your bank account right now, and they basically decide how much money is in there. You now have thousands and thousands of people that are all coming to a consensus on exactly how much Bitcoin is in any given wallet at any moment. And that's a really cool way to think about how individuals and how systems can work together.
And how does this link in with Nillion? What is it and what does it actually do?
Yeah, so starting with Bitcoin, right? We have these nodes all over the world that are basically moving Bitcoin between different wallets, right? You put a transaction out there saying, I'm going to send one Bitcoin from here to here. And the miner picks up that transaction and says, okay, we agree that Bitcoin went from here to this place. When Ethereum got released and Vitalik put the Ethereum out into the world, they took what Bitcoin had and added smart contracts on top of that, which means that they basically added a way to code programs onto a blockchain. So now you have the public blockchain where you can move, these assets around, but you can also write code into it so that if, say, for example, one Ethereum ends up in this wallet, then I want you to send half an Ethereum here and half an Ethereum there. You now have a coded program on top of the blockchain which can execute and do things. So you open up this whole new world for building applications that are on top of a blockchain now, this decentralized world of blockchain. With Nillion, we're focused on that computation piece, right? So we're focused on how do we run programs, and specifically, how do we run programs that involve private computation, meaning computation that not everybody can see because blockchains are public, and also how we can use private data as a part of these computations. So now, instead of a program existing where all of the data is on a blockchain and that program executes and everybody can see it and they can see what caused it to that program to execute and they see what happens when it's executed, you now have a new paradigm to be able to build applications with blockchain where things like privacy, something we take for granted in Web 2, right, that we can do things that people can't see, now can exist alongside blockchains as well.
So why did you want to build Nillion? What is like your driving mission?
Sure. So I'd say the big thing for me on why I got involved with this is really around privacy, because what we're building at Nillion isn't just about, say, bringing private programs onto Ethereum or onto a blockchain. What our blind computer and what Nillion enables ultimately allows us to build all kinds of programs that have implications all over how we use private data in the world. And that is something I think is going to be fundamentally important for the future that's being built right now, but also for, giving some privacy back to people as they interact with the world. We have some new ways that we can use private data that just weren't available before that can exist because of the blind computer.
So you mentioned blind there. What exactly does blind competition mean?
Sure. So I would say that the best way to explain what a blind computation is to think about it as an example. Okay. Imagine there's a really simple example of this that is called the millionaire's problem. And I'm going to call it like the treasury problem. So imagine you're the king of some kingdom and you've got all of your, lords sitting around a table with you. And you want to know how much gold that collectively you all have, because you're thinking that this other guy might invade the kingdom and you need to know how many resources you've got. And all of those lords, they want to be helpful, but at the same time, they don't necessarily want to tell you as the king how much gold they've got, because you might think, hey, you guys got a lot of gold, I should probably tax you all more. Or they also don't want to tell other lords how much money they've got, right? So they want to contribute data, and you want to get to a total for the gold that's in the kingdom, but you also don't want everybody to know how much gold individually they all have. And you as king don't want to tell everybody how much gold you've got either. So there's a way to solve this problem that is essentially a really simple blind computation. Let's say as king, you take the amount of gold you've got, and then you add some massive random number to it. Like, let's say 207,050, right? And you've got 700 gold. So you add those two numbers together, and then you give that number to the guy sitting next to you and say, okay, add how much gold you've got and write it on a new piece of paper, the new number. So that big random number plus my gold, which I gave to the next guy, add your gold to it, and write it on a new piece of paper and pass it to the next guy, and he'll add his gold, and they all go around the table. And by the time it gets back to you as king, all you have to do is subtract that big random number to get to the actual amount of gold that everybody has. Now, this is a blind computation, right? You've added together all of these different people and the amount of gold they've got, but none of the lords know how much gold the other guy has got. And none of the other lords actually know what the total amount is or how much gold you have as king, but you still got to that result. So this is exactly what blind computation is. This is a very simple, just using math or using, addition. But that is essentially what blind computation is. Now we can expand that out to all kinds of computation that computers can do, which go very, very deep and get very, very complex. We can do the same thing with all types of computation like that.
So you mentioned data there quite a few times. So what's currently happening with people's data? Like, how is it being used?
Yeah, so data right now is really something that, well, if it's private data or it's important data or it's sensitive data or it's valuable data, the way that we deal with it right now is we essentially like to put it inside of a really, really strong safe and build really, really high walls around it and try to prevent people from getting in and stealing that data. But we don't actually secure the data itself, right? The data sits inside of a safe that is locked. And when we want to use it, we go and unlock the safe. And then we try to build a really, say, secure tunnel to the place we want to take the data to, do whatever we want to do with it there, then go back through the tunnel and lock it back into the safe, right? So instead of the actual data being secured, we basically just put it inside of this safe. With Nillion and what we're doing with blind computation, we're using cryptography, different types of cryptographic primitives to secure the actual data itself. But instead of needing to lock it in the safe when you do that, you can just compute with that security on top of it. So now the data can sit anywhere and you can come and add those two numbers together with the security on it and then figure out what the result is. So it's a new way of securing data but also making it very useful. You don't have to hide it inside of a safe anymore.
We're talking about data and privacy, but we haven't really touched on privacy enhancing technologies. Could you just tell us a little bit about that and how they work?
Sure. There are many different types of privacy enhancing technologies. We call them pets. I think it's a lot cuter that way. But pets are essentially any type of mathematics that we use to secure information. So we're actually using what we call a soft pet right now, which is the tunnel that goes from my computer to the server that is hosting this podcast all the way through to your computer, is using a secure tunnel right now that is in the web browser connecting to the server. We use this all over the place. That's a soft type of pet. Then there are hard pets, which are things like what the blind computer uses. There's different types like multi-party computation, which is what I described in the treasury example. There are things like fully homomorphic encryption, which is a type of encryption that you can run computation on. There are many different types of pets that make up the space. And what we're building with the blind computer is, let's take all of these pets and put them together in a way where somebody who wants to build an application can have the benefits of each different type of pet, because they're all good at some things and bad at other things. But if we can bring them together and orchestrate between them, then we can offset a lot of those downsides and have a blind computation system that's actually useful for anything that developers do want to build with privacy.
It's amazing. I think no podcast would be without the question of future AI. So some people are kind of scared of the advancement and speed at which like AI technology is progressing. Some people are much more more confident about it and the direction in which it's going. What's your opinion? Should people be scared? Is it going to outsmart us and eventually take our jobs?
Well, I think that AI is definitely going to have an impact on how we interact with the digital world and the jobs that exist in, say, interactions between people. We're already starting to see that with like customer service representatives, right? Like this is an area where AI can, as a chatbot as it exists right now, can make a real impact. But for me, the future that I'm concerned about the most isn't so much, the Terminator taking over the world style of AI. It's really about what AI is going to mean for consumer applications. And what I mean by that is, in the world of Web 2 and social media, we've essentially created these massive behemoth companies that are more or less as valuable as they are and make as much money as they do from collecting all of our data and using that data to basically serve us content we want to see, right? TikTok is addicting because its algorithm is really, really good at knowing what video you're going to want to see next so that it can keep you engaged in the system. And there really has been a race to attention in social media. The one that wins is the one that gets the most consumer attention. With AI, there's actually going to be a massive shift in what the winner needs to do to come out on top. And that's going to be around intimacy. And that's the one that really is where I think the blind computer can make a big impact, but it's also important that we have technology like this with the race to intimacy, it's not about getting your attention inside of an app. It's about which AI application are you using all the time? Which is one knows the most about you? Which one is the most personalized? Which one knows everything about what you like and what you don't like, and what you lie to your friends about that you like, and what you don't tell your spouse about, what you think of her? It's the one that knows all of this information, that has access to these secrets and this really intimate data, that's going to be the one that wins in the long term for consumers. And without something like the blind computer, the only way that we could get there is for OpenAI to know everything about you, right? They know all your likes, they know your dislikes, they know the things you lie about, they know that restaurant that you actually hate, but you tell everybody you like it. They understand how the events of your past influence how you make decisions and how you perceive the world. Like, this is a level of intimacy and data about individuals that we've never really had to give to get consumer applications, right? You're putting stuff out onto the internet all the time, and you're tweeting, and you might be writing something on Facebook, or something angry on Twitter about what Elon Musk said, but that was you putting something out into the world. This is about understanding you and how your brain works, and that's where AI is going in consumer applications. So without something like the blind computer, there's nothing standing between you and giving up everything about you to a company like OpenAI or Google, and who knows what they're going to do with that level of detail. Like, now they have a clone of you, and that's more dangerous than what we've seen happening with the big data companies of Web 2.
What are some of the applications for Nillion's technology, and what sectors could benefit from it?
So there's some really cool ones that we're innovating on now, and there's some really cool ones that I see and I'm really excited to be building. Right now, we're focused on how can we work in the world of decentralization, but some of the really cool opportunities exist in things like, I think a cool one is collaborative computation, right? So that example I gave about the gold and the treasury, that's an example of collaborative compute, where everybody's contributing data to something and gleaning results from their contribution, but they don't have to give it to everybody else who's involved. The really cool ones, and I love this example, so I use it all the time, but Waymo, the self-driving car company for Google, and Tesla hate each other. They're massive competitors. They don't want, Waymo doesn't want Tesla having any of their data. Tesla doesn't want to give any of their data to Waymo. But there are places where if they could collaborate and share data, they would glean results that would be valuable for both companies. So let's say crash accident data for self-driving cars, right? If there was a space where the two of them could come together and contribute data and figure out something useful that makes cars safer, it's worth it for them to do. In the paradigm of how we use data right now, that's not possible. But with something like the blind computer, you could allow both of those companies to contribute data to our network, and then computation could be done blindly with that data, and a result is created from that both of the companies can use, but they don't have to worry about giving this sensitive information to their competitor or to some third party they now have to trust. They can do that in a way where it's blind, but they also don't have to take the risk of giving up their information. And so we create new tunnels for sensitive data that is siloed between companies or individuals, or in medical records at different hospitals, a way to bring that together and allow it to be useful and generate valuable results without worrying about giving it all up to some person you now have to trust with your most sensitive data.
So I think those kind of applications are incredibly exciting to hear. It's a shame that we haven't done that already and it hasn't been used, or if it hasn't been used so widespread. So instead of talking about things that are exciting, what's your biggest excitement when it comes to the future of the internet?
I mean, I think the future that we're moving towards is definitely going to be influenced heavily by the pathway of AI. As somebody who is really busy and has a lot of stuff that they want to do and not a ton of time to do it, anything that makes me more productive is something that I'm really excited about. I think that the agents and the models that we're going to see coming out of AI. Right now, we're in this place where OpenAI and Google are really focused on how do we make the biggest, best, highest capacity, most parameters model that we can possibly create. Let's just figure out how far we can go with this. What's going to come behind that's really exciting for me is going to be when we start to see specialization. And so we'll have these models that are really good at one thing, for example, figuring out how to plan an amazing holiday, where you're going to be able to go to an AI agent and be like, I want to go to, Tokyo, and I really love to eat, and, these are the types of foods that I like, and it's going to map out something for you that would have taken you maybe days to plan out. But the more personalized it is, and going back to what I was talking about originally, the better it's going to be at creating that. But there's going to be many places where we're going to be able to be so much more productive because this AI agent is able to be really good at this one thing that we can just go say, I need you to solve this problem for me. And you're getting something that's 80 or 90% of the way there. That's going to be huge for the productivity of not just people like me, but everybody else.
So you have made that sound exciting, and I think I agree with you. That does sound like a very exciting prospect for the future. On the other hand, what concerns do you have about the future of the internet?
When I look at the evolution that we are going through in our relationship to technology, where it's interesting because this is really common in I'd say a lot of Asian countries, especially with like Gen Z, but not as common in the US yet. We're reaching an inflection point where our digital identity, who we are on the internet and what the data on the internet says about us, is going to become more important than our physical identity. And we're already kind of seeing that in Asia, like Gen Z, like these online personas, like people are known by their, their Discord handle. Like this is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And as we go into the next generation and the one after that, there is going to be a place where suddenly the digital version of you will be more who you are than the real version of you. As we make that shift, in the paradigm that exists right now and the big social media companies we have, the big Web2 data companies that we have, your identity will essentially be owned by whatever company is hosting that, whether it's Discord or Facebook or, whatever application is built out there. Ultimately, like this digital you will exist as long as that company lets you access it. We need to create a part of the world that really belongs to us inside of this digital space. And that was one of the big things that brought me into building with Nillion, is if we can use decentralization like blockchain, where we don't have to trust any specific person, right? It's just decentralized, it's out there, it's open. If we can build that for data as well, we now have a place where applications can exist where you are ultimately the owner of that data. You are the owner of that space. And that means that that digital version of you truly belongs to you.
Really interesting. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us about Nillion. It sounds like a really exciting project. And as I said to you before the podcast, there's actually a lot of excitement on YouTube, on the internet about it. So anyone who's interested, where can they find out more about your great work?
Yeah, so you can learn more about what we're building and dig deeper at Nillion.com. But really, we post a lot of updates on what we're doing on our Twitter account, which is at Nillion Network. So go to X or Twitter, give us a follow. We're always posting stuff there. We're always talking about what we're building. And yeah, we'd love to see more people, coming to us with questions or getting involved or just being excited about what we're creating.
Thank you for that. Just before we go, someone like you who started the company like this, what kind of advice could you give to someone from an entrepreneur perspective?
There's two fundamental pieces at the very early stage that I realized when I started building Nillion with my co-founders. And the first one is that you have to find those first people that you work with, whether it's your co-founders, the first hire that you make, you need people that are incredible. Like find somebody who is really incredible, that is really smart in whatever the most important area of your business is right there, whether it's building the product or building the marketing. Find somebody who's the best and bring them in as those early hires. You have to have people that are able to think on that like next level of creation in order to break out of the noise that exists among just startups in general right now. And the second one is, as CEO and as a co-founder, but as CEO, one of the biggest things that is hard about being a founder, especially early on, or if you're working in, say, an innovation you've got that could go in a lot of different directions, is choosing what are your priorities and sticking to those priorities. With Nillion and what we were building in Nillion, there are 1,000 different directions we could go, products that we could push into, applications that we could build for. We had a whole range of functionalities that we could have started building, or which one do we build before this one and what does that enable? We had so many different directions that we could have gone in, that the thing that allowed us to build to where we are today is that we were very specific on, this is our priority. This is the thing that we're going to build towards. There'll be 1,000 different directions you can go in, but you have to be very clear. And this is really hard to do, which is why it's so important, is to pick, what are we going to prioritize? What are we saying no to? Pick a direction, stick going in that direction and don't let the wide range of blue sky opportunities that exist distract you from building towards one thing first.
Lovely, Alex. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, absolute pleasure, Barry. Thank you.
That was Alex Page, CEO at Nillion.